What's up guys, welcome back to Paul's Hardware. This is Probing Paul, episode number 103, my monthly Q&A, and I'm gonna be straight with you guys. I've been feeling a little weird lately, a little off. Things are just not normal in the PC hardware industry, and yes, I've noticed it as well. But I've also spent a lot of time recently in tech news and other videos discussing the reasons things feel weird, mostly due to the PC hardware shortage and potential looming threats to the PC building hobby, as well as maybe the concept of even owning a personal computer in general. But since I'm heading to Taipei very soon for what will likely be one of the most awkward Computexes ever. But for this video, I've decided I want to keep things more positive, maybe count my blessings a little bit, so to speak. And for that, I would say I need your help, but the fact is, you've already delivered.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise, tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. We begin, as always, with a look back at previous times that I have been probed. There's a playlist if you guys are interested. But last month's episode in particular, 102, I have pulled a ton of comments from. And if you would like to ask me a question that potentially gets answered in the next Probing Paul, you can post that in the comment section down below. We're going to start today with a question from Degmar, posted last month. This is a bit more of a traditional Probing Paul question, but given the high price of GPUs, do you think SLI or Crossfire will ever make a comeback so the gaming PCs can make use of lower end GPUs? I have not messed around with SLI and Crossfire for quite a few years, and that is because SLI and Crossfire is effectively dead at this point. The last time that it was somewhat viable was with the RTX 30 series with the NVLink connector, and I did do some overclocking challenges with that, attempting to beat Gamers Nexus and Jay's 2 cents at OCing. I had a ton of fun with these projects because they were different. I was lucky enough to get a hold of the hardware pretty early on, so I could do this sort of kind of crazy overclocking setup before a lot of other people got their hands on it, which meant I was able to get some high scores on the 3D Mark leaderboard before other people who are much better at overclocking than I am could come in and beat those scores. However, this is a very niche scenario. I and a handful of other people were the only ones doing SLI setups like this with the RTX 3090, and then we did some 3090 SLI stuff when it came out. But for the RTX 40 series and beyond, NVIDIA pretty much said we're not going to do SLI for consumer graphics cards anymore. And I think I can boil it down to three main reasons why that is the case. For the first reason, I'm going to go back to your question, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but there's a lot of misconceptions about SLI and how it works. The idea that you could purchase a low-end GPU and then maybe a year or two down the line, get another of that same GPU, drop it in, sort of double your GPU horsepower, and then extend the useful life of your graphics card and your system, but that's not really how it worked. For one, lower-end graphics cards often did not even have SLI support at all, and that was especially the case with later generations like the RTX 20 and 30 series. SLI was really relegated to more of a Halo tier feature for graphics cards that were more high-end. The higher end the graphics card and the more expensive it is, typically the fewer of those there are on the market, and that leads into the second reason why SLI and the ATI or Radeon alternative Crossfire never gained immense popularity, is that you had to have game engine support as well. With certain applications, specifically synthetic benchmarks like 3D Mark, it was fairly simple, or at least relatively simpler for them to implement SLI support, and that's why a lot of the SLI videos you see test with applications like 3D Mark. In reality, for a more everyday user, like especially someone who's got a mid-range graphics card, even one that did have SLI support, and then added in the second GPU, and then fired up the games that you're maybe most familiar with playing, you would often find that performance would maybe only increase very slightly, and in some cases, performance could actually drop and get worse with a second graphics card added, and that would mostly be because the game that you're playing is not compatible with SLI. The third reason, and I think this is also a very fundamental one, I blame on Ryan Shrout, as I blame many things on, but Ryan Shrout, formerly of PC Perspective, posted this article back in March of 2013, and this sort of kicked off the more modern approach to video card benchmarking and including stuff beyond just an average frame rate. If you're not familiar with this, I'll post the link to the article down in the video's description, but the summary is that they developed FCAT, or Frame Capture Analysis Testing, which rendered the game as well as a colored strip along the side, and then they captured that separately so that they can analyze not just the average frame rate, but how quickly each individual frame was being delivered to the monitor. This shifted the focus from average frame rate to frame time, or how long it took for an individual frame to be rendered, or how long an individual frame was staying on the screen before waiting for the next frame to be ready and presented to the gamer. Long story short, a decade plus later, we now see this manifested as the 1% lows that you often see in benchmark results. You'll still see that average frame rate, but then you'll see a 1% low that is specifically focused on game smoothness, or whether or not you're seeing significant stutters in gameplay, because if you're a PC gamer, you've probably experienced stuttering, and that's one of those things that can seriously detract from a gameplay experience. You might ask how this relates to SLI. Well, it really exposed one of SLI's greatest weaknesses, which is micro-stuttering. You might have a really fast average frame rate, but if it's accompanied by hangs and stutters, you're gonna probably regret paying the egregious amount you probably had to pay for 2 high-end graphics cards to put in SLI, which was supposed to be the pinnacle of the PC gaming experience. As seen here in one of my oldest videos where I tested a 4-way SLI configuration with GTX Titans in Minecraft, of course. Looks like I hadn't quite mastered white balancing at that point. But to sum up, SLI is something that is very niche, requires extra effort from game developers to actually implement properly in games. And then because you're adding latency, because you're sharing resources between 2 different GPUs, the upshot is often micro-stuttering, which for many people who finally dove into SLI testing was like, actually, it's not as great as it seems like. I really enjoyed doing these sort of niche videos like the 4-way SLI testing or the RIP-GN, RIP-J battles that we've done in the past, but ultimately, from a practical standpoint, from the developers of both the hardware and the software, it just doesn't make sense. All right, my next comment is from Scalves67. This is actually from a couple probing polls ago, and I know I said I was going to keep things positive, and this is a fairly gloomy comment, but I'm using this for contrast. After building PCs for 10 plus years, I've decided to essentially give up. Prices are beyond my means. Unless price is totally crater, I can't justify the spending, and they're planning on running their current PC as long as they possibly can. I sort of addressed the impact of this situation, the hardware shortage situation, on me last month. I answered the question about our tech channels that focus on PC hardware dying or our views dropping off, and I can really only speak for myself personally. Things have been not as great as they could be, but things are definitely not dire for me right now. And I wanted to highlight the enormous amount of responses that I got to that question in last month's probing poll, just to say thank you to you guys and to acknowledge that yes, I have seen them, such as this comment from Ensign1, who is a subscriber. And I referenced what I sort of believe to be my core audience last month and the people who will come and watch my videos even if they're not interested in building a PC. I wanted to say how much I appreciate you guys, and it really is refreshing and invigorating to see people say that they like my wit, humor, and play on words and stuff. And I wanted to highlight this one because it includes a comment that's very fundamental to my channel's goal, which is that someone who previously ran a Ryzen 3 3600 and an RX 6600 XT has upgraded to a 5700 X3D and an RX 9060 XT. Both iterations of this build were very cost effective and also very powerful. I like the long-term upgrade path, and if I have helped Ensign1 or any of you guys to make decisions in this regard to find the best bang for your buck option when it comes to PC hardware, that is one of my core goals, so I really appreciate the feedback on that. And Ensign1 was far from the only person to come in with a comment along those lines. I really wish I could respond individually to all of these. I couldn't even fit these all on one page and still have it be legible, so I just wanted to share these, to highlight them, to say thank you guys so much for the positive feedback. And amidst such challenging times in the PC hardware space, it is so wonderful to have fans like you guys. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching, for commenting, for all that you guys do. Before I start to get a little teary, I'm gonna move on to some other questions that are a lot simpler. This one's from John Polk, 8230. Thank you very much for being a channel member for 6 months. John says, Paul, I have 2 questions for you. First, what is your favorite beer? Second, which beer provides you the most stress relief when dealing with computer-related problems? I first want to point out that I actually don't drink all that much. Often the beer that you might see me drink on Tech News is like the one beer I might have all week. Like this 6-pack of Downtown Brown has lasted for, I think, at least 4 weeks so far. I also try not to drink for stress relief. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I try to mostly have a drink as a way to relax at the end of the day or along with a nice meal, something like that. But I also know that stress relief is sometimes necessary and unavoidable, so I'm not trying to judge or anything like that. The beer I have here is Downtown Brown from Las Lost Coast Brewing. I really enjoy pretty much all of Lost Coast's beers. They also have the Great White, which is an ale, which is fantastic. So this is one that I drink with some regularity, and it's fairly accessible to me. There's lots of places around here that sell it. But it's really hard for me to say, like, this one beer is my favorite beer. I usually say anything in like the amber or red range. I like brown ale for sure. I like darker beers like a porter or something like that. The beers that I usually will still drink but don't like quite as much would be like a Hefeweizen or like a IPA, or like the sort of trend in the past decade or so of making beer super hoppy. I don't like the extremely bitter beers quite as much, but a brown ale that I really like is made by AleSmith. It's called Nut Brown. It's got an 89 over on Beer Advocate, which isn't bad at all, but that's sort of like the high level answer to your question. Ambers and reds, browns. If a server comes to me at a restaurant and says, would you like a beer? That's usually what I say. You have anything that's brown or red? And usually they have something that I will end up liking. Okay, last question is from Ruben, aka Movie Phone Guy. Big thank you to your 12 plus months of channel membership. Ruben says, question for Paul and Joe, do you have a favorite fruit? This is a very important question. And by the way, Ruben, you're gonna be coming along with us to Taipei for Computex, because that massive desk mat that you sent over, Joe's gonna be taking that along with us. I can't speak for Joe though. Joe, what are your favorite fruits? Excellent choices, Joe. As for me, I would probably have to say strawberry. Strawberry was like my historic favorites. My birthday is in the springtime when strawberries are often in season. So strawberry shortcake has been my birthday cake many times in the past. But much like with the beer choice, I would say strawberry would only be my number one if you were forcing me to pick. There's so many fruits out there that are absolutely delicious and also an excellent source of fiber. I'd say mangoes are pretty high up there for me. Bananas, of course. You got your berries of all varieties, like your blueberries and your boysenberries, or your blackberries, or your razzmatazz berries. I'm a fan of berries, I guess, which is interesting because strawberry is technically not a berry. But thank you, Ruben, for that very incisive question, and that is all the time I have for this episode of Probing Paul. I was trying to keep things a little bit more lighthearted, given the general climates elsewhere in the PC hardware space. But if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the thumbs up button. I'll post links to various things down in the description below. And of course, leave me a comment if you'd like to ask a question for the next episode of Probing Paul. You can also check out my store at paulshardware.net. We have shirts and mugs and pint glasses, all manner of high quality merchandise to help support the channel. Thank you guys once again for watching. We'll see you all in the next one.